I got something a little bit different for you today. Today I'm going to be reading some of your comments and some of your theories on one of my latest Poppy Playtime theories. What's that? You're just stalling until Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 comes out? Yeah, obviously. Alright, so these are some of the comments from my latest Poppy theory. The Poppy's plan in Chapter 4 is worse than you think. So this comment is from Joey Is Me Too. They may have forgotten Bron, but my god, they're obsessed with cats. Catnap, Candy Cat, Catbee, and now Yarnaby, Lion. Yeah, I'm not really sure whether it's Playtime Co. or Mob Entertainment, though, that are obsessed with cats. It might just be that the devs really like cats and wanted to make some cat designs, who knows. But it could also be that Playtime Co. isn't quite as innovative as they like to pretend. And now we know that Jimmy Roth, the head of marketing, he wasn't exactly great at his job. He talks about how the color blue is really important, even though most toys aren't blue. And then he talks about how names ending in E are somehow also important. So I wonder if Jimmy was kind of a hack, and whenever something worked, he just carried on doing it. You know, he saw that Catbee or Candy Cat, whichever was first, seemed to work, and then he just kept making more of them because he wasn't very good at his job. Who knows? But it's an interesting idea. And yeah, there are a lot of cats. So this next one is from Exile Sky, and they say at 6 minutes a little off. The toys are not objects, they are flesh inside. It's why they are hungry. They need to eat us just like any other living creature. It's why they collected the staff on the lower levels and ate them, then started cannibalizing each other. What they figured out is far more horrifying than just a brain in a jar. They figured out how to take the brain and important organs and put them all into a new body and make it sync up, which is terrifying, honestly. Yeah, it is pretty terrifying. It's also impossible as well, just to get scientific for a little moment, but the idea that you could take a human, put their brain in a completely different body with a different shape, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work at all. And the reason for that is we actually have maps in our brain that map out the body. And this is why we have phenomenon such as phantom limb pain. Now that is, if you lose a limb, say you lose an arm, sometimes people can still feel that arm. They can feel sensation and quite often pain in that arm that they don't have anymore. And the reason for that is that your brain still contains that map and it's a little bit confused about the signals that it's receiving, or I guess in this case, it's not receiving. Usually your brain would be feeling the nerves in the arm and receiving information from those. And now it's like, I don't know what's going on. And that's why we have phantom limb pain. So the idea that you could take a human brain and put it in, say, Mommy Longlegs' body just would not work. The brain would completely reject that new body, and you wouldn't be able to control it like Mommy Longlegs does. Now, obviously, this is all fiction. It's a story, you know, and it's completely not real. But the idea that these scientific experiments are grounded in any sort of reality is just not true. Now, the idea that they need to eat, this is actually something that I don't know if I agree on, because there's been sort of two main theories so far, and one is that they absolutely do need to eat and they're going to starve, and then the other one is that they just think that they need to, right? Because we know that experiment 1006, or the prototype, we know that he actually doesn't need to eat, and so it's weird that he doesn't need to eat but all the others do. And we know that Boxy Boo has an appetite and that Harley Sawyer tailored that to flesh, but what if this is just they feel like they need to eat because that's just what you do, right? It's one of your primary instincts is to feed. And so these toys actually don't need to eat. They just think that they do. And so they become hungry, they become starving, and then they eat, even though they actually don't need to. That's a possibility. But either way, the fact that they feel hungry is why we have so many problems in Playtime Go. Now this next one is from Kizeri Yuzu Savai 2185. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. I just realized Poppy fits the exact same description of Poppy, a human girl in the children's novel Doll Bones. The story is about 3 kids, Zach, Alice, and Poppy, who travel to bury a doll with the soul of a girl trapped in it. I've noticed it had parallels to the plot of Poppy Playtime, specifically how they used a human body, the bones specifically, to make a doll, and their goal is to put it out of its misery, like with the toys in Poppy Playtime. Also, Poppy is pretty aggressive in the book, sometimes being the antagonist of the novel before switching to becoming the character's friend again. That sounds really interesting. I've never read this, Doll Bones. I've never read it. Is there a movie or a TV show adaptation? No, I don't get a lot of time to read, but maybe I should. Maybe I should add it to my reading list, because that sounds really interesting. And I wonder if Poppy is just a coincidence there, or that is a link, who knows? So yeah, I should add it to my research for sure. I do think, for me, I think the name Poppy is more synonymous with the flower, which has links to World War I and maybe II. And I think that's something that I'm going to explore. There's a video that I've been wanting to make for quite a while that I haven't, because it touches on some really dark and really sensitive issues. You know, the bad guys in World War II. So I haven't made that video yet, but if I ever do, I think the Poppy links far more to that theme than anything else. But it could also link to this too. So yeah, maybe I should add that to my my reading list. It sounds pretty interesting. Sounds like a fun story. So this next one is from Cameron Herman 9400. Never forget Bron. Fascinating theory, by the way. Another reason for Poppy's personality changing could be that while she was a prisoner of Mummy Longlegs, she learnt the full extent to what happened during the Hour of Joy. She said she heard everything in chapter 3, not that she saw all the horror and death. This is actually something that has popped up a few times in my comments, and I kind of disagree. So if we look at the CG5 music video, which we don't know how much of that is canon, but it was obviously made by Mob, so you know, I think it's probably going to be very close to canon if it's not canon. We can see that Poppy was outside of her case when the Hour of Joy happened. Now, I think some people think that she was inside the case during the Hour of Joy and that's why she only heard it, but I don't think this is true. I think the reason why she says she heard it was because she was hiding. Now, if you look at the CG5 music video, you can see that she's really panicked. She looks like she's hyperventilating. She's very, very scared, clearly. And I think she hid during the Hour of Joy so that she didn't get killed. Why did she hide? Probably because she wasn't on the side of 1006. And we know that for how good or bad 1006 is, he doesn't seem to treat those who are against him all that well. So, or at least he allows the other toys to treat them badly. So we saw that with Catnap and Dog Day. So I think she was probably just hiding from it all and she probably didn't really see it all. That's my guess anyway. But I definitely think that the music video implies that she was put in her case afterwards. She was probably caught and then Catnap put her in there and, you know, put her to sleep. So this next one is from It's Easy Cheese. Great name. I think Poppy is going to be on her own side. She isn't with the player nor with the prototype. The prototype wants the toys to just live out their days in peace. Sawyer wants to keep experimenting and torturing them. I bet Poppy is going to take the stance of the toys need to die so the kids can rest and finally pass on. She doesn't want to kill them. She wants them to be able to move on. Being a toy isn't right. It's not natural. This needs to stop. That would be very, very interesting if Poppy was Stella Graber. Now, the reason why I think that would be really interesting is because we know that Stella and Elliot Ludwig were really close. Their names were next to each other on the slides. And it seems like, you know, they were like the two sort of heads of the company that really cared about children. So if Poppy is Stella, like I've been, you know, banging on about for quite a while, how interesting would that be? Seeing now she's so opposed to the prototype, who we still think is Elliot Ludwig. Now she sees how far gone he's gone and he's not really holding on to his values anymore. And there could have been a hint to that when we heard Stella's tape in chapter 3, where one of the orphans who was supposed to be adopted was taken to be experimented on without her knowledge or consent. It definitely seems like Stella was very surprised and very put out by this. So yeah, if Poppy is Stella, it would kind of make sense that she wants to put an end to it all. She wants to let these orphans rest. They're all crazy, they're all starving, they're all, you know, scarred by all of this. So it could make sense that Stella is trying to save these children, but, you know, I say save, but sort of put them out of their misery. That's a really, really interesting comment. I like it. Now, talking of Stella maybe being Poppy, here is a comment by Psycho0001. Okay, so a lot of things, but something I'd like to point out is that Stella Graber cannot be Poppy for the simple reason that Stella was alive when the experiments were taking place and she is the announcer in the play area. Game Theory even pointed out she was alive to know about Mummy Longlegs and the experiments, two things that took place literal decades after the Poppy we meet was created. This is actually not true. Or I should say there is no evidence that this is true, because we actually have no evidence to prove that the Poppy we see in the old vintage VHS tape is the same Poppy that we are talking to in chapter 2 and onwards. Now, this is one of the things I find is really fascinating and kind of makes theory crafting a bit more fun, but is also a little bit frustrating in a way, is the idea of we really don't know who is who was created when, you know, what doll is which, because we know these experiments have been going on for a long time, and who knows when the experiment that created this Poppy took place. She could be the old Poppy and she's really old, or this experiment could have taken place a month before the Hour of Joy. We really don't know, right? Like, this is the big thing. And I definitely think that Mob know this. They know that there's an element of mystery in not knowing who anybody is or what experiments are which. But I also think that this is kind of leading to a lot of confusion in the fan base too. But I've already talked about this before in theories, the idea that Poppy had her voice box changed or fixed or maybe even replaced. So her voice could be completely different to what her human voice was. The idea that there could be multiple Poppys, the idea that somebody transferred themselves into a doll that was already occupied. That's another crazy theory we could go with. The idea of, this is also kind of similar to Chucky, if you've ever watched any of the Child's Play movies. The idea that transfers can take place one way and then the other. The idea that, you know, there are imposters. The idea that you could split them into several. There's like so many different things that they could do with this mechanic, this idea. I think it's really difficult to say definitively like this Poppy was the original one. There's no hard evidence for that. We just don't know. We don't know at this point. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with this. I think it's definitely a possibility that this Poppy isn't who she says she is. And I definitely think the Poppy is very sus. So I guess it will remain to be seen. Now this next comment is from Wacko Doodle. Imagine if the entire factory is actually alive. When a monster chases you, you can run away, but the building you're in, there's no hiding. In my opinion, it's the scariest thing in horror when rarely done. If you can put people in objects, a building isn't impossible, especially for the one behind the whole thing, but it's just a thought. After all, it happened before once in Silent Hill, where the place you're in is the real threat. Everything else is just living in it. So the Silent Hill part is kind of interesting because it's not entirely true. I love Silent Hill. I love the lore, but the place is kind of being possessed by a god. And I say god in air quotes. But I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. The whole idea of the factory being kind of alive is a really interesting one to think about. And it's also kind of probably true. We've seen that the Make a Friend machine is definitely alive. It's following you around the room with its eyes. And I've even said recently in my theories that I definitely think the train was alive, and I think Catnap put it to sleep, which is why it crashed. So the idea that the factory is alive is, again, kind of true. There are lots of machines in this factory that have probably been, you know, automated. They're kind of like using a weird old form of AI. Instead of using AI, they're just using human consciousness to power everything, which is, I think, even more scary than the experiments like Huggy Wuggy. Like if you get transferred into Huggy, sure, cool, you got a brand new big body. But imagine if you got transferred into the Make a Friend machine. Like that must be such a miserable existence, right? Like you can't move, you can't really do anything. Oh, that must be horrible. That's scary. That's scary to think about. So this next comment is from RJ Flute. Is it possible that prototype 1006 is Harley Sawyer's prototype first attempted his consciousness transfer? Then he perfected the method and transferred himself into Poppy. Now Perfect Sawyer Poppy wants to destroy prototype Sawyer to remove competition, and then kill the bigger bodies, and then transfer himself out of Poppy and back into his human body. This is what I was talking about before, where the whole transfer of consciousness gets really confusing and can be really sort of, you know, over convoluted if mob aren't careful. But I don't think that this is necessarily true. So the reason why I personally think that Harley Sawyer was dissecting 1006 is because he wanted to learn something about him. And he even says this, he says there's secrets within you or something like that.
There's a secret inside you, 1006, valuable beyond all measure, and I get closer with each session. So speak, or don't. Fight, or give in. Regardless, I learn something new about you every day.
Now, if Harley Sawyer created the prototype, why would he be then trying to learn secrets from him? I don't think that makes any sense. I think it's much more likely that Elliot Ludwig created the prototype, and this is why Harley Sawyer A, dislikes him so much because he hates Elliot, and B, is wanting to figure out what is going on because Elliot Ludwig denied Sawyer the opportunity to learn this process when he kicked him out of the Young Geniuses program. However, the idea of Sawyer being transferred into a doll body from his current form is very, very interesting indeed, and I think that's something that could even happen in Chapter 4. I think that's something that Mob definitely could go down the route of. If Playtime Co. can transfer human consciousness into a doll body and also into a computer, there is nothing to say that that computer can't be then transferred, or that computer consciousness can't be transferred into a doll body. In fact, I think we've even seen him sort of using a body cobbled together in the latest trailer. So I think that's a really clever idea. I just think I disagree with the whole prototype being Harley Sawyer's prototype. All right, so those were just some of my comments. If you liked this video, let me know and I'll maybe do more. But yeah, thank you for everybody who left comments on my videos so that I could talk about them. This was some really interesting ones. Once again, a massive thank you to everyone who has shown support over on the Patreon. Videos like this are only possible with your support. So thank you. I appreciate you being here and supporting the channel. I'll see you next time.